Bonjour, je vais parler sur les questions de laboratoire à Winnipeg et j'ai quelques mots sur ça et je suis prêt après ça de prendre votre question. Premièrement, je vais dire que la situation avec le manque de sécurité et à le laboratoire à Winnipeg en 2019, c'était pas acceptable. Ça, c'est la raison pour laquelle on a s'assurer qu'on a pris beaucoup de mesures, de s'assurer que la situation ne jamais arrive encore. I want to say just off the top that the situation that occurred in 2019 with respect to a lack of adherence to security protocols and procedures at the Winnipeg labs in 2019 is unacceptable. Since that period of time, extraordinary effort has been taken to ensure that nothing like it ever occurred will occur again, and those protocols are well in place. I think it's important, before I get into talking about the ad hoc committee process, just to talk about taking us back to 2019 and to the moment in time that we were in that. From the threat environment with respect to foreign interference was in a very different place at that moment in time. I think there was a nascent understanding of the extent to which foreign actors, in the most direct sense, China, and we're talking in this instance, in other instances Russia and other foreign entities, foreign governments were attempting to influence Canada. While there were the proper protocols in place, there was a lax adherence to the securities and protocols that were in place that, as I said, were unacceptable. The second thing is, prior to the pandemic, I think the threat environment, and as we understood the need for security, and certainly was well understood in terms of viruses, but after the pandemic, I think was much greater. There was, going back a number of years now, an enormous amount of concern around events that had happened at the National Microbiology Laboratory in Winnipeg. And that led to an enormous amount of speculation. Some of it was completely valid in terms of concern around security. Some of it was completely manufactured, and that misinformation was frankly very damaging and caused a lot of problems in a time of real crisis in the country. And if you recall, and I was House Leader at the time, I said it was extremely important that not only the parliamentarians get to see the documents in question, but that we make sure that the redactions that were done by the Public Health Agency of Canada were appropriate. And in this, I would remind folks, and this is an extremely important delineation, the public service, in this instance the Public Health Agency of Canada, is the agency responsible, completely independent of government, to make a decision of what occurs in terms of redaction or what doesn't occur. And Parliament has a responsibility to be able to see all documents. In fact, I was the public safety critic, if you want to go back further in time, talking about the need to have a committee of parliamentarians that could see into every aspect of government. One of the things we didn't contemplate at that period of time is, what if a committee of parliamentarians, upon seeing documents, believed that the redactions that occurred were too aggressive? And let's remember, in this instance, we're talking about redactions that would occur to protect the identity of employees or to protect national security interests. And I thought that was a reasonable argument made by opposition parties at the time. So you may recall, when I was the government House Leader, I suggested an ad hoc process with an independent panel of arbiters who would take any questioned redactions, look at them, and make a binding decision about whether or not that information should be released to the public. I want to say at that moment in time that the New Democrats signed up right away. We took some time to convince the Bloc and the Conservatives to sign up, but I think it was a model of how to deal with a dispute of this nature. And the resulting process is the documents that I tabled in Parliament today. And I would say that the documents that have been tabled have erred on the side of transparency, that the arbiters have taken the view, and I believe rightfully so, that it is better, particularly with all of the questions that are out there, that we disclose the absolute maximum amount of information. Now, I think it's important for the public service to reflect upon the redactions that occurred in this place and the amount of additional information that was shared, to think about how we can do it to the greatest extent possible while still protecting national security and the identity of employees. But that having been said, I think the arbiter struck the absolute right balance in only containing what information they believed was absolutely necessary and waiving some of the normal protections around identification of employees and some of the normal constraints around national security to make sure that the public could have the most full picture of what occurred at the lab. And so with that, we have copies of the documents with those redactions removed, and I'm prepared to take your questions.
Why were those scientists fired?
So I think I'm not going to get into sort of the operational aspects. Well, because I both wasn't there.
The government has hid 4 years, taken the House to court over, overly redacted over, and is now doing less redactions because they were called out.
So I disagree.
Can you please just answer the question?
So first of all, I disagree. I would say that in respect to the administration of any element of government, it's extremely important for the government not to be involved in making decisions of the administration of the public service. So it would be totally inappropriate for me to tell the public service who to hire, who to fire, or even why. We have an oversight responsibility to ask questions and to provide overall goals and objectives, and that's what was done in this case. So
why were they fired then? Why were they fired?
So the decision was made by the Public Health Agency of Canada that the individuals in question, that their behavior warranted them being fired.
What was their behavior? What was their behavior?
Well, look, I think that it became clear that they weren't disclosing information, they weren't disclosing relationships, that the nature of other work that they were conducting wasn't being disclosed.
Which was what? Working with China?
Well, I would leave you to the documents.
We don't have the documents.
Well, you do now.
Will it say in the documents why they were fired and what the concerns were?
Yes.
So it is going to be clear in this
It's
information.
explicit in the documents.
Okay, can you tell
Well,
us?
I'm not here to give you a
have that
blow-by-blow.
available in about 2 to 3 hours. You're
Well,
speaking
they're
to us.
available right now.
Well,
So
I'd
first of
love
all,
a
so
copy.
you will be given an electronic copy, or if you want a
We
physical
have
copy.
not yet been. Can you please?
Sure. I mean, you know it. We don't have the documents. Just
I'm
say
not.
it to us.
So first of all, okay, everybody just take a step back. I'll try to take a different approach, and perhaps this will satisfy you. That the decisions that were made, and I have to make this distinction. The Public Health Agency of Canada operates at an arm's length and appropriately, and particularly when we're dealing with national security and when we're dealing with the security of labs or with employees and employee information. It is very clear when you read the documents that the employees in question were involved in a variety of different scientific enterprises that were not disclosed, information was not given, and that they had relationships that they didn't provide information about.
With who?
And those relationships, the relationships that they had included concerns that there may be connection to their involvement with China, as an example.
Are you concerned that China was interfering and trying to get information, delicate information, from Canada's National Microbiology Lab?
Well, I'm absolutely certain, and you will see it from the documents, that no sensitive information left the labs.
Trying to get it.
And what I also am certain of, and I wouldn't have been certain of this in 2019, and neither would the Public Health Agency of Canada, that the lengths to which China was willing to go and is willing to go in a contemporary context to influence science and obtain information is deeply disturbing. And yes, China is, by all evidence, trying to interfere in our domestic circumstance. The same could be said of Russia, and that the question of foreign interference now is a very real one, in a way that in 2019 it simply wasn't.
Well, the two Michaels were in jail. Let
me go to somebody who.
Maybe I can just ask something a little more general, and then I would like to hear my colleagues sort of press further. There's a lot of documents, I understand, that are being released right now. What sorts of things might Canadians see in them? Can you tell us, what are we going to learn new? We're going to learn about how the individuals were fired. We're going to learn about Chinese interference, or is there some other stuff? Can you give us some high level? What's new
at
today?
At a high level, what you're going to see is two employees who were not disclosing. I mean, they were eminent scientists, people with very respected backgrounds and very respected scientific work, who were undertaking work that they were not disclosing. we're not making public health agency work. This was work related to a number of different scientific
Working with
endeavors.
the Chinese military? Can
No,
you
no,
please
nothing
tell
like
us what it
no,
is?
not working with the Chinese.
Why leave it vague? Can
Well,
you just
because I
tell us
don't
what it
look.
is?
Because one of the things is, and I hope you appreciate this, is that there is a lot of very precise information in the documents, and I don't want to misrepresent it.
But you've read it and we haven't, and you're speaking to us before we have the opportunity to read it. So
and
we're
I will,
asking
and
you
I
to
will
disclose
return
it.
after you've had an opportunity to read it for you to be able to ask direct and precise questions. I don't want to mischaracterize the nature of their work, right? I mean, we are talking about employees who were let go. This is human resources issues. We're into disclosing. Normally, we wouldn't do this. We wouldn't disclose the names of people. We wouldn't disclose the work. We wouldn't disclose the nature of why somebody was fired. I worked at Heart and Stroke. Many times when people were let go, you're not able to talk about the reasons they're let go because of transparency.
Pages.
No, but that's the reason why. This is the reason. That's exactly why. No, first of all, so there's two different parts there. The reason why this is different is because of national security and the need for transparency, and that's why this is different, and that's why we're behaving differently.
So why
But
did it take
understand
4
this.
years? Why did it take
Well,
4
there's
years to get to this point?
in the principal point, because there was a process at the moment in which there was a dispute about releasing documentations. Remember that redactions are conducted by the public service, and should not be interfered with politically. Parliament rightfully said that they wanted to see the documents, and then rightfully had questions about whether or not the unredacted documents should be made public. I do, yes.
I'm
I
sorry,
do.
if there's minister.
I want to know about
Yeah.
this. Are there now questions we're going to learn about the competency of the agency you now are in charge of, PHAC, that what's been unredacted is going to embarrass the heck out of how PHAC let barn doors open and everything?
No,
Have you
I don't
read
think,
that
I think there was, I do think there was a lax adherence to security protocols. I think that there was an inadequate understanding of the threat of foreign interference. I believe that an earnest effort was made to adhere to those policies, but not with the rigor that was required. And I do not believe, I'm not going to sit here and say anything other than the Public Health Agency has in all instances comported itself in the utmost professionalism. And that unfortunately, that there were employees who were dishonest about some of their engagements. Those engagements at no time led to sensitive information leaving the country or to things that would elevate to the level of me saying that we should get into any sort of state other than saying in 2019 things should have been done better, and now are.
Can you tell us how many pages?
Sorry, I'm going to
there
go here and then I'll
You're
come
talking
back.
about lax adherence. I mean, people let PRC nationals into the lab. Who authorized this?
Well, I think that the question at the time was these were eminent scientists whose research and work was well known. They were leaders in their field, some of the brightest scientists that were known. And I think in 2019, the extent to which China was attempting to influence the scientific community or to interfere in domestic Canadian affairs was not known to the extent it was today.
Were already in prison at that time.
Yes,
So
and
I'm sorry, how is it that the threat of China was not known?
well, I think the dimension at that point in time wasn't around. Are they trying to inject themselves into domestic processes and into our science? I think that and it wasn't that there weren't protocols in place. There were policies and protocols,
weren't followed.
but that's precisely the problem.
So why
I
is
think.
no one else being fired then?
Well, I think that and I would invite you to look at the documents. I have, and I can tell you that in my read of the documents, and I think back to 2019, that there was the lax adherence was concerning. But that it was on the aggregate, when you take a look at it, professionals who, yes, could have and should have done better, but I don't think it rises to the point of firing them.
Are you confident? Are you confident?
You don't think that hiring two scientists who have now been fired because they were possibly trying to sell Canadian secrets to China is too lax
First
to
of all, you're
recall
making
a firing?
you're jumping in logic that they tried to sell secrets to China. There's no evidence of that. That's the first point.
But did they
The
just
second
give the
point,
secrets to China?
no, there's no evidence of that either. The second point is that I am not. What I am saying is that before again, I would invite you to read the documents. But that if we're in a circumstance and we're talking about the administration of the Public Health Agency of Canada, they engaged in hiring. People who were eminent scientists, who were leaders in their field, who had outstanding reputations.
Who are also working with China.
No, there's the concern. The concern is the relationship that they had with Chinese science, Chinese businesses that they did not disclose and was not known to Public Health Agency at that time. That is a material.
That material has been disclosed about any of the other employees.
Well,
currently
because I
working at
think
the
that the rigor that at that moment in time, when you have a leading eminent scientist in the field of in the field of life sciences, who have extremely strong reputations and are well documented in North America in terms of the quality of their research and work, that in the past, thinking that such an individual would be lying about sharing information or doing something, wasn't the clear and it wasn't at that moment at the level of
high secure lab in the country.
No, absolutely,
and
there
they're
were,
just
and
treating
that's
all
why we had
scientists
those
with
policies.
this naive assessment that everybody's just in
No,
it for
I don't
the
think it's.
information.
I don't think that's
and
the
that's
case.
okay. I don't understand how nobody else is being held accountable. You're
Well-
saying this is PHAC's fault, and you're telling us that the people at PHAC who are now at ESDC and other places in government hold no accountability, have no punishment, have no consequences.
Look, at no time, what I'm saying is, and let's go back first, because I think it's important to ring fence what we're talking about. At no time did national secrets or did information that threatened the security of Canada leave or enter the lab. So I think that it's important to note that the security lapses that occurred, while unacceptable,
But did it threaten human health?
yeah, I think that the answer to my view is that we are facing an emergent threat, not only in China, but in Russia, where foreign actors are willing to do things and cross boundaries that we previously would not have imagined. And I think knowing that now versus 2019 certainly changes the dynamic. And I would point out that it was actually me as House Leader who said we need a process to show these documents so that the full story can be
And why
understood.
did that then lead to
Well, let me take the last
One,
question because I
you
have to
said
vote.
that
I have to vote.
they
and I
did not
apologize.
disclose some of their enterprises. Can you just qualify what those enterprises were? What kind of work did they not
Well,
disclose?
I'll leave you, let's return to that question after you've read the documents. I don't want to mischaracterize it. I don't want to mischaracterize it. There's a lot of information there, and I don't want to be in a position where I mischaracterize.
Minister, you know about
Okay.
it.
Why did you cover this
Well,
up
okay,
for
I'll
4
take
years?
this as the last one because
Why
I
did
don't,
you-
there is absolutely.
It's 4 years.
So first of all.
My colleagues reported this 4 years ago.
Right.
Your government took the House of Commons to court to try and avoid releasing the documents
No.
that you've now been dragged kicking and screaming
No,
to
I
release.
first of all, I
Why is
disagree.
that?
I completely disagree with that assessment. Let's go back and understand that redactions, and then, I'm sorry, then I really do have to vote. Redactions take place by the public service. It was done specifically by the Public Health Agency of Canada. Okay, well, that's an interpretation, and you can take a look at that. I would agree with that interpretation. And what happened, once there were questions, is we said, let's try to find a process. It started, if you recall, with an offer for the NSICOP, the Committee of Parliamentarians, to look at it. That Parliament said that wasn't acceptable, and that's fair. Just one second. Parliament said it wasn't
know that
acceptable.
outside the
Just
we
but let
don't
me
know the
finish. Well,
inside
but look,
process.
you can't know if you don't know my answer. I don't. You just hold on a second, please. So NSICOP said, and Parliament said, that the problem was if they found that there were redactions they didn't think should be there, that they wanted additional transparency, the challenge was that they had no way to get that. And so that's why I suggested the ad hoc process, so that we could have a process where those documents could be released. And unfortunately, that takes time, because when you're dealing with national security and the identity of employees, you don't just do a table drop,
So
with
no
all
one
due
in
respect.
no one in the Health Minister's office vetted the redactions by PHAC of this highly sensitive, politically injurious
What
issue
I'm saying
for you.
is, what I'm saying
No,
is,
please answer the question.
I am answering.
Nobody in the Health Minister's office had any responsibility.
I'm sorry, I am answering the question. I am saying that redactions are not done, nor should they ever be interfered with by me as a minister. That redactions are done at an arm's length by the public service and by agencies. Parliament had a question. We started with NSICOP. That wasn't sufficient for the reasons that I explained. I created an ad hoc committee. That ad hoc committee rightfully did its work and released the documents that we have today. It's a success of that process. The reason it took time is because we're dealing with national security and the identity of employees who were terminated, which is incredibly sensitive information. Because it dealt with national security and out of the interests of transparency, most of those considerations were waived so that we could, in an unprecedented way, share that information. I apologize.
So you
I have
believe
to
in
vote.
ministerial responsibility, but not in this case?
That's not what
It
I
doesn't apply here?
That's not what I said. That's a mischaracterization.
Well, has your office overseen it?